In today's video, I've got 10 different players who have an amazing advantage for week 4 of fantasy football. This could be their team situation, an amazing matchup, an injury of one of their teammates, giving them more volume, or an injury to a defensive player that's going to make it even easier. Plus, we got players that are quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. So no matter what position you're looking for, we're going to cover it in this video. By the way, this is my first time making this video on YouTube. So if you do want to see this content every week, let me know down in the comments. Hit that like and, of course, that subscribe, and let's get to our first player. Player number 1 is Chuba Hubbard. This week, they're playing the Patriots, who have been relatively weak against running backs. We see they're about middle of the pack, slightly on the lower side, so that alone is a good advantage. But the special advantage this week is that the New England Patriots' best corner, Christian Gonzalez, is expected to play in this game. We expect him to cover the Panthers' best wide receiver, Tet McMillan. Tet McMillan is being covered by a top-tier corner. That's going to make passing the ball a lot harder than it has been against the Patriots. If it's harder to pass the ball, that will give extra opportunities to Chuba Hubbard. When we look over at his receptions, we see 3, 5, and 2. We could see a good receiving number in this game, since Bryce Young is not going to want to be targeting Christian Gonzalez as a top-tier corner in the league. Now for an injury of a teammate that's giving someone an advantage is Jake Ferguson. I honestly think Jake Ferguson may even be worthy of a flex spot in your league, even if you have like a Brock Bowers or you already played Trey McBride, because look at this production so far. Week 1, 7.3 points, obviously not great, but week 2, 16.8 points. CeeDee Lamb played in that game. In week 3 against Chicago, CeeDee Lamb missed the entire game. He had over 20 points. And what I love about this is it was 14 targets. He had 6 targets week 1, then 12 targets, then 14 targets. And against Green Bay, who's weak against the tight end because they're rushing the 4 players. You don't need the tight end to stay in and block, but then they have that amazing zone defense behind them. Jake Ferguson operating in that short yardage will again be a top target this week. Because CeeDee Lamb is out, that's a special advantage for Jake Ferguson, and he has to go in lineups. Our first wide receiver of the video is Deebo Samuel. Breaking news just now, we saw that Terry McLaurin missed Friday's practice, or at least he wasn't spotted there. With Terry McLaurin missing this game, that gives Deebo an extra advantage. Now, I know he wasn't that good in week 2 with Marcus Mariota, but still we'll have to check Jaden Daniels' status in this game as well. But with Terry McLaurin missing this game, that makes Deebo Samuel the clear wide receiver 1 for this team. He's someone you could lock into your lineups with Terry McLaurin out. Now, one of my favorite running back starts of the week is J.K. Dobbins, and his special advantage is he gets to play the Bengals this week, which is a huge advantage over most weeks. You saw last week he played the Chargers and still had a great week for fantasy football. This week, he is a must start. We go to the matchup tab. One of my favorite parts about the Walter Picks app, you can get this in my profile with code NOBS. We see Dylan Sampson, Travis Etienne, Jordan Mason. 3 weeks in a row, we've seen amazing running back production. Not to mention, Bashul Tutin also had a good game against this team, especially with Jake Browning at quarterback. The defense is going to dominate, giving plenty of opportunity for J.K. Dobbins to go crazy against this team. Just last week, we saw Jordan Mason dominate with over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. If J.K. Dobbins is on your bench, I know you drafted him late, but you got to get him into that starting lineup. This is probably the best possible matchup you can have in all of fantasy football this week. Next is Dalton Kincaid. We do have a couple of tight ends on this list, and I love him this week against the Saints. We see he's got a nice matchup. Plus, he's been a lot more involved than we've seen in the past. Year 1, he was pretty solid. Last year, he fell off the mark. But with 6 targets in the last 2 games, that is enough volume in this Buffalo Bills offense for him to be a start in your lineup. And I think a lot more trustworthy than at least I was expecting at the start of the season. Now, our first quarterback that has an advantage is Justin Fields. Now, his health-wise, he is projected to play in this game. And you saw week 1, he was dominant against the Steelers, my Pittsburgh Steelers. Justin Fields, a little bit of a revenge game there. He had a great game. Week 2, he got injured. Week 4 and week 5, he has amazing matchups. So if you do have Justin Fields, you're not sure if you should play him here or somebody else, I think he's a great start this week against Miami. Perfect get-right game. On the matchup tab, you see they face Daniel Jones, Drake May, Josh Allen. 3 quarterbacks that can run a little bit, and they all scored over 22 points. Josh Allen was actually the worst somehow with 22 points. If you have Justin Fields on your team and you don't have another top-tier quarterback, or if you've got a guy you're debating between, start Justin Fields with an amazing matchup. This is a huge advantage in week 4. On the running back side, I love Tony Pollard. I also like Calvin Ridley a little bit more than I have in the past. I like Cam Ward a little bit more, and Alec Eomanor. The overall Titans team, they get an upgrade this week. We look over at their schedule. It's been one of the toughest possible schedules you can have. They start with the healthiest possible Denver defense in week 1, Cam Ward's first ever game. Then they play the Rams, an extremely tough defense who did great against the Eagles in pretty much 3 quarters of play. And then they played the Colts, who are a great team as well this year. That is an extremely rough start for this offense. It put them in a lot of bad situations, a lot of good defensive players they had to play against, but finally week 4, they get a good matchup. This is finally the first time we're going to be able to see Tennessee operating against not a top-tier defense in the league. You've been disappointed with your Tennessee Titans performance so far. Week 4 is the time for them to get right with a big advantage, finally facing a much easier team. Another player with an advantage this week is TJ Hockenson. He was extremely disappointing week 1 and 2 with JJ McCarthy at quarterback, but JJ McCarthy's injured, and now we have Carson Wentz. That's a big upgrade for TJ Hockenson. We look over in the game log. The snaps, not amazing, but this is a game that was well out of hand, but the targets was great. He had 6 targets, and imagine Pittsburgh, if they're able to keep this game somewhat close, TJ Hockenson could see even more targets. Now, I know Jordan Addison is coming back. I'd like to sit him this week if possible. That is a slight disadvantage, but with the advantage of having Carson Wentz still at his quarterback, I would play TJ Hockenson this week. He's a top-tier tight end option. Not over Jake Ferguson, maybe not over Hunter Henry, maybe other tight ends that you've added because he was not good weeks 1 and 2. I would bench them this week in order to play TJ Hockenson. Our last tight end on this list, I know this has been a tight end heavy video, but it's Mark Andrews. Now, Isaiah Likely is trending towards playing in this game, but this is going to be Mark Andrews' last game where Isaiah Likely may be on a snap count, may not be 100%. Remember, he shouldn't be in the best shape possible because with a foot injury, obviously it's difficult to run. It's difficult to do the exercises, the speed work it takes to be in NFL football shape. Mark Andrews, this is one of his last games where Likely probably won't be dominating the snaps, where Likely won't be taking the targets as much as he will going forward. Mark Andrews, he had a great week last week. They got him back involved. And this week, when we go to his matchup, we see he's facing the Chiefs. That's a really tough matchup for tight ends, but it's a tough matchup everywhere. Mark Andrews can have a good week, even though they've been good against tight ends so far. Mark Andrews can stand out because so far they've had a really tough schedule against tight ends. But last week against Detroit, Mark Andrews still found a way to make it happen. He can make it happen again this week against Kansas City. And if you have him, now's the time to start him while Isaiah Likely is still coming back from injury. So that's a special advantage for week 4. And as we get to the final player, guys, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. Drop a start-sit question as well. I'll be answering every single one. And we're talking about Jakobi Meyers with his special advantage this week. And a lot of it has to do with this amazing matchup. But he plays the Bears secondary. They are 28th in the league. The other advantage, though, that a lot of other pages aren't going to talk about is the Bears secondary is dealing with a couple hamstring injuries. So not a lot of people are doing the research, looking at the defenses to see who's healthy and who's not, because that makes a big difference. A defense can be solid. The Bears defense to start the year, they are a solid unit, but with all the injuries they've had, especially in the secondary, that's going to make it a little bit easier for players like Jakobi Meyers to have success. He's my last player week 4 that has a big advantage, so put him in your lineup.